Hi Toddy, how you doing?
Super.
You good? This is Toddy Ruttman, and this is also Sean Kurker with Voices of Racing. I'm going to actually come around. So we're in a facility down here. It's called Silo, and it's an event space, and they also it's a membership club, and people can house their cars here. You've just kind of been walked through the facility. What do you think of it?
I think it's cool. I'm glad I came. I'd come back.
All right. Well, we're going to make it kind of an audible museum so you can look up a number on each car and hear the history of the owner talk about it. And you happen to know the gentleman right here that's back on the poster, is that right?
Yes.
And it was because of your father?
Yes.
And who was your father?
Troy Ruttman.
And your father won the 500 in, was it 52?
Yes.
52? How many years did you race?
He started racing at the age of 15 in 1949, and he retired in June of 1964. So 19 years.
And then your brother or his brother? Was it your brother that also raced?
My brother raced go-karts and became a national go-kart champion, and then he also went on to race a super modified, which was originally a roadster that my dad had driven in '63 at Indy. And my brother spent a whole year converting it into a super modified. And he was in high school and drove at Pocono in the first smaller racetrack, not the larger racetrack.
Right.
And the throttle stuck wide open, and my brother was killed instantly in that race car.
And that was in high school?
He was a senior in high school.
Wow. And now, for your father, how many years did he race in the 500?
My dad was in 12 Indy 500s.
So what was that like for you growing up and just kind of being in the industry and around that whole world? How would you kind of sum it up?
Well, honestly, I wasn't allowed around a lot of it when I was littler, but in the time that I was there, I thought it was great. I wished now that I would have been exposed to a lot more of it, because I'm just now learning in the last 15 years about my dad, how good he was, how unbeatable he was, how generous he was, and how good a person he was to some of the fellow racers that he raced with. I'm just now learning that. My father was never one to toot his own horn and never was arrogant or big-headed, so I have some of these old-timers telling me stories, like Bobby Unser, who just passed away. He's told me a couple stories that I never would have heard if it hadn't came from him, because my dad never was one to share stuff that he did for people.
Right.
He just kind of did it on the QT, you know.
Right. Didn't Unser say that he thought he was one of either the best or top sprint car driver ever?
No, who's told me that is Rufus Parnell Jones, AJ Foyt, Jim Rathman, Roger Ward. There's been 5 of them. Daniel Sexton Gurney, that's what my father called him. He called him Gurn. Yeah, there's been several of them. And again, my dad never said that. That's what they've told me personally in the last 15 years before they passed. Rufus is still with us, and I had an hour conversation with him a year ago. And 3 years ago, before Gurn passed, I had a 3-hour conversation with him. And he taught me and told me so much more about my dad that I never would have known had he not shared it with me. My dad taught him a lot, and even though they were only a year apart, that's amazing. But see, Dad did everything young. I mean, he was racing at 15 when most kids didn't even have a driver's license, because my grandmother changed his birth certificate to 1927 instead of 1930. So it looked like my dad was 18 and he was really only 15. So nobody knew until after the fact. When he came to Indy, he was really 19 and they thought he was 21. But by the time they found out he wasn't 21, it was already too late, and a year later he won the Speedway. So.
And he was the youngest to win, right?
Yes.
Youngest to ever win.
22, yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Well,
My dad was pretty amazing. My dad was my hero and my best friend.
And how long ago did he pass?
May 19th, 1997, 24 years ago.
Okay. Well, I'm sure his legend will live on, and a lot of the guys that knew him, and hopefully they'll keep passing on those stories. And but obviously being the youngest to be able to win the 500 and then be one of the top ever from what legends think he did in sprint car and everything else is pretty remarkable.
Yes. Next year is the 70th anniversary of my dad winning Indy. So my goal next year, because I got my professional driver's license with SCCA for 3 years, and I've started driving vintage cars, and they want me to drive a vintage car with a Offie-powered engine in the next year, which I'm going to do up at the Miller Meet. And once I've done all those hoops that they want me to jump through, then next May on the parade lap, they're asking me to keep it to 50 or 60 mile an hour. And they'll let me take one parade lap to honor my father.
That's phenomenal.
That's going to be the highlight of my life, and I won't do it again. I've just done it, honored my dad, and I'll keep it together until I come in. Then I'll probably, yeah.
Maybe do a couple donuts.
Right. Yeah, on those skinny tires, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. I just wanted to get a little bit of the background and also a little bit about the facility. But
this facility is awesome. I'd come here in a heartbeat.
well, we're going to be interviewing the owners and also a lot of race legends here too. It'll be a really cool place to be able to preserve the history of the stories behind all the drivers and the teams and the people that are just fans of cars and racing and driving in general.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. All right, well, we're going to close this one out.
Okay.